that one good.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, recommend you check out our new introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below. It's pretty short. It'll give you a quick rundown of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. And the subgenre we're talking about today is haunted attractions. Haunted Attractions is a subgenre on our Horror Movie Supplement, which is an additional 300 movies that we're going to talk about, an additional 100 subgenres to the original Horror Movie Syllabus 100 subgenres. So I'm pretty excited to get into this one because I love me a haunted attraction. I really dig all of those, scary Halloween timed or Halloween themed rides and attractions. And you know what we're talking about here in haunted attractions. We're talking about, dark rides or, scary mazes or haunted houses or scare zones, Halloween horror nights, things like that. And I've gone to a fair amount of them in my time, and I tend to really, really enjoy them. They are made for horror fans, let's be honest. They're made for people like me. I find them to be a very fun thing to go to, and I find them to be a very fun setting for a horror movie. The idea of a haunted attraction being the place that a horror movie takes place is a really seemingly obvious one. I don't know if you've ever been to one of these attractions, but one of the things that I can't get past, one of the things that I always think about when I'm at these things is how easy it would be for somebody to take it too far, for somebody to go crazy a little bit and just start killing people, doing it for real at a haunted attraction. Because, and you got people running at you with like chainsaws and knives and stuff like that, wearing masks, and they're trying to scare you, and they're trying to scare you, but what if one of them wasn't? What if one of them wasn't an employee and is just, going to go nuts? Or what if you're not really at an attraction that is actually that safe, whether it's because they're not run well or because it's not even a real authentic attraction and you've been duped? These are thoughts that I have when I go to haunted attractions, and clearly I'm not the only one because there's a whole subgenre of these. There is a whole bunch of movies that fit into this subgenre where the action or a large part of the action or a significant part of the action takes place at a haunted attraction of one sort or another. Now, we've talked a little bit about some of these movies in the past and other videos in the Horror Movie Syllabus. And so, as you know, the supplement doesn't repeat things. We're not going to talk about movies that we've already talked about before. So any of the movies that I've talked about in the past are not going to be talked about here. So like House's October Built, not talking about it. It fits perfectly in this subgenre, but we already talked about it. So it's not going to be included here. But we do have plenty to talk about that's really, really good. I feel like if you've been to a haunted attraction before, these movies are going to hit for you. And if you have never been to one, I think they oftentimes will give you a flavor of what it's like to go to one, what they're like, what they're about, how the experience is. And that's actually what I wanted to kind of rank these on. As you know, we usually rank the movies on a scale of undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level. And in this case, we're going to rank them in the order of how authentic or realistic the depiction of the haunted attraction is. How much of a good job they did capturing the feel, the look, the aesthetic, and the experience of a haunted attraction. So that's going to be the criteria we're going by. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So why don't we sit back, strap in, and enjoy this ride into horror haunted attraction movies. The first haunted attraction horror movie we're talking about today, the undergraduate level selection, is Haunt. Haunt came out in 2019 and is something of a surprise movie. Even though it was produced by Eli Roth, it seems like it kind of came out of nowhere and really caught people by surprise in a very good way because it was a really popular movie. I think it debuted on Shudder and it wound up being a pretty big hit for them. And people, namely horror fans, have really gravitated to this one, and for good reason. But we're going to get into that in just a minute. If you haven't seen it before, the story is about a group of friends that decide to go to a haunted attraction that's kind of in a remote area in the middle of nowhere, and it's in a really large space, and it's very creepy, and nobody else seems to be around, and these people wearing masks, creepy masks, are kind of ushering them through this maze of weird, creepy rooms and puzzles and things like that, and they deduce that they are in danger. These are not people that are having their best interests at heart, and they are in trouble. and hijinks abound, as they tend to do in these movies. But the interesting thing about this movie right off the bat is the haunted attraction, and how it doesn't feel super plausible. You know, I'm ranking these in plausibility or realisticness or whatever, accuracy. And this one, the haunted attraction feels like not very realistic. It's in this gigantic space with a lot of very elaborate rooms, and they are, you know, it's kind of a mix of like escape room and haunted maze, and scare zone. And so it's kind of a little bit of a mishmash of all kinds of different things, and it doesn't feel like the most realistic of spaces for a haunted attraction, but it would be like the most amazing haunted attraction if it was a real place. Like, I think just realistically speaking, there'd be no way to do this kind of thing. The money doesn't make sense. It would just be too expensive to find a space this large and do this much work on it. But I'll give the movie this mulligan because they even pay some lip service to how the killers do a quick patch up job to try to make this thing ready really quickly to lure their victims in. There's like dry paint that's not dry, things like that. It's kind of, there's hints that it's been roughly and quickly put together. So I'm going to give it a pass on that. You know, it's going to still be the undergraduate because it's not as realistic as the movies we're going to talk about coming up, but it is interesting because they do use this location really, really well. And that's the thing. This movie might not have the most realistic haunted attraction, but it is a fun movie. And I say fun in the sense that it really got me engaged and kept me on the edge of my seat. It's a little bit of a bleak movie. It's kind of heavy and dark for a haunted attraction movie, frankly. And so fun is maybe the wrong word I'm using for it, except that I really enjoyed watching this movie because, like probably everybody, I had no expectations going into it, and I was very pleasantly surprised by just how well made this movie is. It's really, really done well. Like I said, the haunted attraction might not be realistic looking, but it looks realistic, if that makes sense. They made it look like a real place. They made it look lived in and kind of slapdash and creepy. And they have, you know, the killers in these really interesting masks. And I won't spoil some of the twists and turns in this movie because there are a lot of twists and turns in this movie that are good surprises. They have some really good twists in this movie that I thought landed pretty well. But I won't spoil them too much. So suffice to say that the killers wound up being rather interesting aesthetically, and we'll leave it at that. But I really liked how well they made this movie. The acting is really solid across the board. They do a decent enough job of making the characters interesting enough that you give somewhat of a damn about them, but not, you know, not so much so that it slogs the movie down a little bit. There, you know, it gets to things pretty quickly. They do a really nice job with sound design, with the set design, with just the whole filmmaking aspect of this is really solid by directors who are fairly new at the time that they're making this movie. I guess they also wrote A Quiet Place, so they're doing work. But they did a really, really nice job here making this movie feel creepy, having it be well paced, having it done in a way so you're not nitpicking any kind of technical aspect of it. And it works really, really well. So I had a lot of fun watching this, even though, again, it's not it doesn't have the same kind of slasher vibe of, say, like a Friday the 13th or something like that, where you're just kind of rooting for the killers and you're having a good time. This is a little bit more bleak, a little bit more dark, a little bit more grim. Not overly grim, but still not a breezy time. And that's to its benefit. It's what makes the movie, to me, fun, and to everybody else, I think, really good, because it's been very well received. It was very highly regarded. It got really good reviews. I'm honestly surprised that I haven't heard anything about sequels being made, because frankly, it's probably fairly easy to sequelize this into a series because the premise would bear it, frankly. There's a lot of things that could be explored in terms of the group of people that are doing the killing, or the way that the haunted attraction gets set up and things like that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how other movies have tackled that kind of area, or that type of subject matter. Suffice to say, Haunt kind of leaves it where it's at, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you leave them wanting more, that means you've done a good job, and I would want more. I very much into Haunt. It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I felt, even though it's not, again, there's a lot of haunted attraction movies out there, it's not necessarily the most original. It felt original for some reason. It felt like a fresh voice in horror. It felt like something new, probably because you had hungry young filmmakers who really wanted to make an impression, and they did, in fact, make an impression. If you haven't seen Haunt, Again, it's kind of like a slasher type movie, so you kind of get an idea what you're getting into. But I definitely would recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun, and amongst the holiday attraction movies, I think it's one of the better ones. So that's why we're talking about it here, and we can talk about it more in the comments below if you've got opinions on it. And I hope you do, because Haunt is worth talking about. The next haunted attraction horror movie we're talking about today, the graduate level selection, is Hellfest. Hellfest came out in 2018 and was about really popular for about 5 minutes, and then kind of seemed like fade away. And when it came out, it seemed like there was a lot of good buzz for it, and then it just didn't seem to hit. But it hit with me, and I'm going to explain to you why I think it deserves to be on the syllabus in just a minute. But first, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a group of friends who have known each other for some time, and they decide to go to a Hellfest, a haunted attraction that's pretty large and pretty popular. And while they're there, they wind up getting stalked by somebody who is not an employee, who is dressed up like one of the employees, like one of the scary people. And he is killing people, and he's got them targeted for his next victims. And of course, they can't quite figure out what's going on. And then they also can't get people to believe them when they do. And of course, the hijinks abound going forward from there. And I won't spoil it any further than that, but it's a pretty simple premise, and it's exactly what I was talking about earlier. It is the idea of somebody going into one of these haunted attractions, putting on a mask, getting a knife, and just going to town. Just in how long would it take for people to figure out that something real was happening amidst all this fake stuff? Because the fake stuff looks very, very real. This is fun. This is what I'm looking for. This is the kind of thing that really tickles me when I go to a haunted attraction. And this is somebody literally putting my thoughts right up there on the screen, and I couldn't be happier about it. I actually really like Hellfest. And again, like I was saying, it didn't really seem to hit. Not a lot of people do. It's not the most well-reviewed movie. It wasn't a big hit. And that's a shame for me, I guess, because I really like it, in large part because of how much they nailed the haunted attraction aspect of it. They've got it down right. And I guess they did film at Six Flags during the Halloween season. And so a lot of this footage is at a real place. And that makes sense because it looks very much like I go to the Halloween Horror Nights here at Universal Studios, and absolutely love it. I've gone a couple times, and this looks exactly like that. This is exactly how it looks. So if you've never been to a haunted attraction, this movie will give you a really good sense of what it's like there. And I love that they nailed that. They really captured that, and makes you feel like you're at the haunted attraction, which is a big, big plus for me. Outside of that, I admit that it's somewhat of a rote slasher film, but you know me, I'm an easy lay for a slasher movie, so I'm already on board for this ride. You've got a group of disposable young people. There is Bex Taylor Klaus in there. I do like them. They're in the Scream TV series and a couple other things. But mostly the actors are doing a fine job. They're just disposable characters like any slasher movie. So it's hard to get too invested in them, but you don't really need to be invested in them. You're invested in the environment. You're invested in the scares. You're invested in the notion of how realistic this could be. And that's what hits for me. That's what makes Hellfest so good for me, is that it is so easy for it to be done this way. So easy for something like this to happen. That's a really fun concept. And what it does also is, if you buy into that concept in Hellfest and then go to a haunted attraction, that's just adding to the fun. When one of these people is running at you with a knife or whatever in a haunted attraction, in the back of your head should be this thought like, what if this is the one? What if this is the person that's not actually working here? That's going to add to the experience. That's going to make it that much more fun. And so that's what makes Hellfest stand out for me, is they really captured that. They really zeroed in on it. Now, again, I might be being a little bit biased because it's really hitting into a sweet spot for me when it comes to haunted attractions. They've nailed the haunted attraction aspect of it, the look of it, the feel of it, and they've nailed that number one fear for me of going in there, that unease of how safe is it really in real life. They've got that down. So that may hit more for me, admittedly, than it does for other people, and that's fine. Everybody else didn't love it as much. It's not getting sequels, I don't believe. I haven't heard anything about that, and I'd be stunned, frankly. But it is a fun one, and it's also got Tony Todd in a little bit of a cameo appearance. He's his voice throughout, and then he does have a little scene and everything like that. And so you can't go wrong with some Tony Todd. There's a lot to like about this. I feel like people need to revisit this, and I'm betting that some of you have seen it. Maybe you don't think that highly of it. We can talk about that in the comments below if you think I'm wrong on this, or being a little bit too forgiving on it, but I think it's a lot of fun. And if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. This one is definitely not as bleak as the Haunt movie that we just talked about. It really is more of a fun slasher vibe. It is having a little bit more fun and a little bit more playfulness with it, so it goes down a little bit smoother in my opinion. But I am a big fan of Hellfest, and I'm bummed that not everybody else is. So we can debate it in the comments below, but I'm just gonna say that I like it, and you should check it out. And the last haunted attraction horror movie that we're adding to the supplement today, the postgraduate level selection, is House LLC. House LLC came out in 2015 and is a very popular movie, a found footage slash mockumentary movie that really, really hit for everybody, including me, and is very, very popular enough to actually start its own franchise, actually. And whether or not it warrants a franchise is something we're going to get into as we get into why this movie winds up being so successful and so good. But we'll do that in a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is both a mockumentary and a found footage movie that it tells the story of a group of friends who have a company called House LLC that does haunted attractions. And it's telling the story of a haunted attraction, haunted house that they tried to make out of an old abandoned hotel, and how things apparently went wrong, leading to a really great tragedy and a mystery surrounding that tragedy that's being investigated in a documentary and through the use of found footage, and trying to uncover what exactly went wrong. Was it supernatural? Was it bad management? Was it something, sinister or something human? And we'll stop there so as not spoil the mystery or the surprises. But the movie is an excellent use of the mockumentary and found footage style. And when I keep saying both because it actually does both. It starts as a documentary about this tragedy at the Abaddon Hotel, which is where they're having this haunted house that they were going to make, and where a bunch of people died, and they're trying to, uncover the truth behind it. And as the documentary goes on, they come across some footage, some found footage, and they start using the found footage to explore the mystery. So it's doing both, and it's doing both very, very well. This really is an excellent example of both of those movies. Probably better out of the found footage than it is about the mockumentary style, but both of those are being represented really well. Of course, I didn't put it there. I'm putting it here because it squarely fits in this haunted attraction subgenre, because it's showing not just a really cool haunted house style haunted attraction, but it's also showing behind the scenes, how they are setting it up, how they're making it, the business aspect behind it. Things like getting security, setting up cameras, how much money goes into it and stuff. That stuff, for me at least, was very fascinating because it made it feel very authentic, very real. Getting that peek behind the curtain into the business of putting on a haunted attraction, seeing what kind of work goes into it, seeing how small of a crew you could potentially use to run it was fascinating. And it makes me honestly reevaluate Haunt a little bit because, you have a small group of people able to put on this large hotel haunted attraction thing, and it feels very realistic and believable to me in House LLC. Whereas in Haunt, I felt like it didn't seem very realistic because the space was so big and everything. In this case, I don't feel that way. And it's because it's a smaller space, because it seems very manageable, and because they're showing you that behind the scenes aspect of it. They're showing it from the jump, from where they find the location to building out all the sets and everything like that, to when they actually open up. All of it's literally documented and detailed in the movie, and they found a really cool space. This building is really cool, and you believe that they could have gotten this place cheap because of the lore behind it and its state of disrepair, and turned it into this haunted attraction and just run people through it. And you can also see where they're not quite as professional as they should be, and maybe that's what's led to this tragedy, and that's part of what's getting explored in the movie, and explored very, very well. Not only is the found footage mockumentary stuff done really well, but they've got a really good set of actors here who are quite believable, and they're doing a decent enough job of explaining why things are being filmed. There's a guy who's really obsessed with trying to capture everything, and for the most part, they're avoiding that pitfall of a found footage type movie of like, why are you still filming? They do a decent enough job of that. They don't 100% completely succeed, and some of the framing is a little off. Like, why am I filming myself off center to like this? Like, like why are you doing that? But it's very forgivable because you're having such a good time, because it's so interesting, because it's so well made, because you're really buying into the found footage aspect of it. I think the found footage is better than the mockumentary. The documentarians, they don't always feel as authentic as I'd like them to feel, but the people in the found footage running the haunted mansion or haunted house, haunted attraction, really feel very authentic to me. And I buy into them and I buy into this ride. And they do some really cool scares. They do some really fun stuff with spookiness and earned scares for the most part. It's not a bunch of just jump scares. They do a lot of good things, creeping you out and things in the background, stuff like that, that I think work very, very well. And I'm not alone. Again, this is a really popular movie and it's a really popular series of movies. Now, to me, the sequels are diminishing returns. I don't like them as much as the original. I don't hate them, but I think that they fail a bit because they explain more of the mythology and the unanswered questions of the first movie that I felt didn't really need to be answered. I tip my hat to them trying to give answers to people and trying to build out this mythology and make it all make sense and have it go somewhere. That's great and ambitious. I just don't think it's necessary. It's over explaining things and it loses a little bit of the mystique, a little bit of the creepiness of it. And the ultimate ending in the third movie is a little bit of a letdown, in my opinion. In both in terms of aesthetic, it doesn't look very realistic, and in terms of story, it doesn't really hit for me as well. But I do admire their attempt. I just don't think it needed that kind of explanation. And apparently, they're making a fourth one that I really don't think is very necessary. I think it's going to be a prequel. I feel like maybe the filmmakers are going a little bit too much to the well on this because they found something that really works and they're just going to keep drawing from the well. And that's unfortunate, but the first one does work really, really well. The sequels, like I said, a lot of the same kinds of scares, so it can feel a little repetitive, especially if you watch them all straight through, which I have done. But it's not enough to detract from the first one. The first one really is excellent, and I've watched it multiple times, and I don't get sick of it. I don't watch the sequels as much because, but the first one I do think is an excellently made movie. It really does do that found footage stuff well. It does deliver the scares. It does make a really interesting and compelling exploration of a haunted attraction from the inside out, if you will. And that's really what hits for me more than anything is that aspect, that behind the scenes aspect of the haunted attraction, and then seeing it play out. It really worked for me very well, and it does have some nice twists, which we won't spoil, of course, but definitely a great ride, man. If you haven't seen House LLC, it's a high recommend from me, and probably from your friends as well. You should check it out, and then let me know what you think. Come back here and let me know, because I feel pretty strongly that this is one that people tend to like. I haven't heard anybody who really didn't like it. I've heard people who didn't think it met the hype, and that's fair enough, but I haven't heard anybody who actually had a bad time with it. So feel confident going in and then coming back and letting me know what you think. So that's going to do it for our exploration of the haunted attraction horror movies. But as usual, I've got some extra credit movies to check out, and these ones are pretty fun too. The first one we're going to talk about is The Funhouse. The Funhouse came out in 1981, is directed by legendary Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist fame, so you know that you're in good hands right off the bat, director-wise. And that's important for this movie because the direction is the accomplishment in this movie. It's really what makes this movie noteworthy in any way, shape, or form, frankly. If you haven't seen it before, the movie is, as usual, about a group of friends that go to a carnival, and there is a dark ride of the carnival, one of those creepy rides. You go on a little train or whatever, and it shows you all these creepy things. And they decide to stay there overnight just to kind of like have some fun and do an endurance test. And they find more than they bargained for. Then they witness a murder by a malformed masked creature person who they get his attention and not in a good way, and the hijinks abound as they tend to do. But the movie itself is, to me, it's a lot of fun, mostly because Tobe Hooper makes it fun. It's a very rote concept. I mean, you've heard me say it multiple times in this video, and it's really, not nailing much of anything. The characters are paper thin, not tremendously likable. The acting is not great, and the whole story is just it's kind of there, but it's just done so well. The moments of tension feel tense. The things look good. The pacing is really tight and good. Like, I just feel like it's a really well-made movie that gets a hold of me, even though I'm looking at it and I know if I can look at it objectively, go, yeah, this is not a great movie, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time with it, and I'm going to give all the credit to Tobe Hooper on that one because I think it is a key part of the movie that it's just directed really, really well. Now, there are other things about the movie that work out pretty good too. And again, part of that is the Tobe Hooper aesthetic. He makes things look good so that the space looks creepy. The final design of the creature is really cool. I really like that. So there are some other things that are noteworthy here, but what I find noteworthy and maybe not a good way is this dark ride. Like, there's no good sense of space in this movie. Like, this dark ride from the outside does not look like it's that big, but it's enormous on the inside. It's like Doctor Who or something. Like, it's really crazy big and just very, very elaborate, way more elaborate than any cheap, come to town carnival should ever have. And so, in terms of realism, something we've been talking about in this video, it falls pretty short. It really, like, there's a point where you're in some place that looks like a laundry room and there's like hooks with chains going around. It's like that. Like, where the hell am I? Why is this in this dark ride? It's so strange. And so, there's like multiple levels to it, and there's like apartments in it, and like it's so completely bizarre. Like, so much so that it kind of takes me out of the movie a little bit. And what keeps me in is that Tobe Hooper direction. Like, the tension is there. The surprise is there, the creep factor, it's lit well. It just looks good, it's made well. And that keeps me in. It keeps me from spending too much time just making these questions about why this and why that and how this and how that. So, again, all the credit to Tobe Hooper. It's not one of his best works by a stretch of the imagination, but it is worth seeing. If you like Tobe Hooper, it's definitely worth seeing. It's not a waste of time by any by any means, but it definitely is not a great movie. And I think the reputation it has is because of Tobe Hooper, both in terms of his name and in terms of the talent he put on the screen. So that's my my kind of lukewarm recommendation on it. It is a good movie. It's a good time, but go in with managed expectations. Don't go in there thinking you're going to get the next Texas Chainsaw or something, because you're not. It's really just it's a fun dark ride. That's all it is. But it's it's not a bad way to spend 90 minutes. The next extra credit movie I'm going to mention is Dark Ride. Dark Ride came out in 2006 and stars Patrick Renna and Jamie Lynn Sigler, and is very similar in setup to The Funhouse. And it's kind of interesting to see how that setup is as ubiquitous as A Cabin in the Woods in this subgenre. Like, it really does tend to be the same kind of setup over and over again. And this movie doesn't necessarily do anything different with it, but it's noteworthy for at least one reason, but we'll get into that in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a group of friends that go and decide to stay the night in a dark ride at a carnival that is supposedly the site of a big tragedy where somebody did real killings way back in the past, and now they're finally reopening. But this person who went to a mental asylum has escaped and might actually still be in the dark ride with these these group of friends that are going there to spend the night. And of course, hijinks abound when they get in there, and we won't spoil it, but the movie isn't treading any new ground. Let me just say this right up front. Dark Ride is not treading any new ground. It's not really doing anything that we haven't seen in some of the movies we just talked about, much less other movies, but I do like it. And the reason why I like it is because it's just gory. It's gory. Now, I don't mean like Terrifier type gore, but I do mean that there is some gore in there that's kind of Terrifier-esque in terms of its level. And it's worth noting, this is a movie that was done at the After Dark Horror Fest, which was a film festival that would show these indie movies. And one of the kind of common threads was they tended to be a little bit more graphic than would be considered mainstream in a mainstream theater. So this is kind of one of those movies, but it's not in terms of quantity, it's really in terms of quality. It's not like the movie's just a gore fest, like something like Terrifier, for example. It's really more that there are 2 or 3 scenes that are really standout scenes. And one in particular that it just will stick with you, again, kind of like a Terrifier scene, is the beheading scene. The beheading scene in an intimate situation is absolutely outrageous. It's absolutely gruesome and graphic. It really goes there. It really is pretty raunchy and disgusting and gross, and I absolutely love it. You know me, I'm a little bit of a gore hound, and I love a little bit of transgressive stuff, and this movie, that scene in particular, is really hitting that. And that's what makes this movie noteworthy. It makes it stand out. It's what makes me mention it to you here today for the gore hounds. Because otherwise, it is a rote slasher type movie that has some somewhat predictable surprises. Like, the script is not great. The dialogue is absolutely awful. The acting is not particularly good either. And even though you've got Jamie Lynn Sigler from The Sopranos, and she's a capable actor, she's good. And you've got Patrick Renna, who was Ham in The Sandlot. So You're Killing Me Smalls and all that. So you've got some talent there, but they're not enough to overcome what is a poor script, both in terms of story and especially in terms of dialogue. You've got this dark ride that once again feels too elaborate for the setting. Like, this is just a regular old carnival, and this dark ride feels too too elaborate, too well made, and way too large for the space it's supposed to be in. So once again, you're kind of distracted a little bit by the implausibility of the setting, but the gore comes just quick enough to make me forget about that stuff, to make me not worry about the plausibility or implausibility of the movie, to not worry so much about the clunky dialogue. In fact, at some point, the clunky dialogue started becoming a little bit fun to me because it kind of became a little bit of a so bad it's a good movie. Not quite bad enough to be a so bad it's a good movie, or as good really, but I was having a good time with this. This one is a maybe a guilty pleasure mix. I don't really feel guilty, so whatever. But it's not a great movie. But if you're a gore hound, there are a couple scenes in this movie that are going to get it for you. They're going to get it done. The rest of it is fine. Again, you're not going to be mad at it. You're not going to be disappointed or just distressed over it. But you're also not going to be wowed or amazed, except for a couple of really great gore scenes. So if you're a gore hound, high recommend. If you're not really into gore, yeah, I can't in good conscience tell you to see this, but I don't think you'd be mad at yourself for seeing it. Although you might have to close your eyes for a couple of scenes. But that's Dark Ride, and again, I don't think a lot of people have seen this one. It doesn't seem like it gets a lot of buzz, so I wanted to bring it up and talk about it because I do like it, and I do think it's noteworthy. But I also want to be honest about how noteworthy it is, which is not a lot. So that's my 2 cents. View it if you will, and let me know what you think. And the last extra credit movie I'm going to mention is a movie called Ruin Me. Ruin Me came out in 2017 and is another one of these movies that is, following a bit of a formula, but has a bit of what I think is a twist on it and is really maybe more ambitious than it is successful. But I really admire the ambition and I really admire what they've done here in terms of filmmaking. So I wanted to talk about it and let you guys know about it in case you didn't know. And I'm guessing a lot of people don't really know much about this one because it's another one that doesn't seem to be very well known, very big, very popular. If you haven't seen it before, like most of you, the movie is about a group of people that go on a thing called a slasher sleepout, which is like a camping trip, a horror themed camping trip where they're going to do scares and they're going to be like a little bit of a plot, like you're stuck in a horror movie kind of thing. That's all part of an attraction, part of a ride, if you will, part of an experience. And of course, things are going wrong as people might actually be getting killed for real, although it's hard to distinguish reality from fiction. And that becomes a theme for our main character because she is a recovering drug addict and is having a hard time figuring out what might be real and what might be hallucinations. But we'll stop there so as not spoil the movie too much for you because the movie is trying to tease out a mystery. And that is both the best and worst thing about the movie. Best because it's a little bit more ambitious than the standard fare of pretty much everything else we're talking about here. It's not just a slasher thing. You've got this backstory of this girl and her boyfriend, and she's trying to she's a recovering drug addict, and he's like her counselor or whatever, and they're going on this trip, and she didn't really want to be there because she's not into scary movies, but she's having she's seeing these things and she's not really sure what she's seeing and how much of this is really just in her head, and that's fun. An unreliable narrator kind of concept is fun, but it also sets up this mystery of what is actually going on. And I don't think they fail in explaining this mystery by any stretch of the imagination. I think that some of it is a little predictable for me, and I think that not all of it makes a lot of sense. It's a very convoluted, kind of twisty type thing that is both twisty and obvious, which is not a great combination. And when you think back on it, it's not like you think back going, "Oh, this is all falling into place," and "Oh, I did miss this, and I didn't think that, and I really want to watch this again and see." No, no, no. You want to watch it again because you don't think the logic holds. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's depending on a lot of plot conveniences and contrivances and coincidences, and so I don't know how strong that narrative is, but I'm a little forgiving about it. I don't need to nitpick on it too much because I'm having a good time. because I like the way they've set this up. I like the idea of the slasher sleep out, this, camping theme thing, because these are real. I don't know that they exist. I've never been on one. But I know that they do them out here in California, and I was actually going to go to one, but I never went. But it seems like this is one that might not be quite up my alley. But I do think if it's like the one that they showed in the movie, it would be an interesting experience because it feels like it's part, haunted attraction, part escape room because there's puzzles to solve, and you're interactive with the story. You're not just, having people jump out and scare you, but you're actually taking part in it and making decisions, and the decisions impact how the story goes. And if that's really how it is, I'd probably be up my alley because you know me, I love an escape room. Also, we've talked about those in our games video. So the blending of the two make for a really interesting experience. So this movie had me for going for a ride because I really liked the attraction, the haunted attraction. I really liked what that setup was. I thought that the acting is not great, not horrible, but not great. But it's a really cool concept. Like I said, like the story, the mystery, I'm not 100% sure they nailed the landing. I'm not 100% sure it holds water, but conceptually, it's good. Conceptually, it's got this, escape room meets Saw, meets Friday the 13th, meets a haunted attraction horror movie kind of thing going. And that's all working for me. Those are all things I like. So that's all coming together nicely. And they're trying to give the movie a little bit of a heart or a little bit of drama in it too. And I don't think they're unsuccessful in that. I do wish the acting was a little bit better. I wish the dialogue was slightly better, but I do think they've got something here. Like the filmmakers have done a good enough job making this work. It might have worked better as a found footage movie, to be honest with you. I'm glad that it's not, but I can see how that would be effective. And I would be interested in seeing what the filmmakers do next because I feel like this was an ambitious movie that maybe didn't have the biggest budget. It feels a little bit like a do-it-yourself movie. It does, but not so much so that it looks cheap or unprofessional. It's lit well. It's the sound is good. The lighting it works. The camera work. Everything is very professional looking. It looks slick. It looks fine. It just it feels like a bunch of friends that got together and made a movie, and I can respect that. I can kind of get into that. So I do like the movie. I like the ambition, but I do baseball analogies all the time. They did not hit a home run here. They swung for the fences. They didn't hit a home run, but maybe they hit a solid single, maybe even possibly stretched out to a leg double. I think it's a pretty good movie, but it's one that doesn't seem to get talked about much. I mean, I don't think there's a Wikipedia page for it. Like, there's really not much buzz for it, so it feels a little under the radar. So I feel like a good one to talk about as an extra credit movie. So if you've seen Ruin Me, let me know what you think because I'm pretty positive about it. I'm not super enthused about it, but I like it enough to talk about it. But I also want to be mindful that it's not amazing. It had room for improvement. I feel like a brush up on the script, maybe some solid, better acting, and maybe just a little bit of tightening up, and this would have been an excellent movie. So it comes close, doesn't quite hit the mark, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about this one because it is, again, one that's worth talking about. And so those are the movies we're going to talk about today for the horror movie supplements exploration of haunted attractions. Like I said, I love a good haunted attraction, and I love a good movie based on a haunted attraction, or even not that good of a movie apparently based on a haunted attraction. It is a sweet spot for me. So this is one that I really do enjoy, and hopefully you enjoy it too. But now, time to enjoy a horror trivia pursuit card. As usual, I'm going to ask a question here on camera. I'm going to read it right off this card. And I'm going to read the killer category because we're talking mostly about killer movies. So let's get into this one. And the question is 1976's Alice, Sweet Alice was the film debut of what actress? This is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. I can tell you right now. And this is funny to me because this is like the second time I've had an Alice Sweet Alice question that I had sworn that I've seen this movie, but I don't think I've seen this movie because this is the second time that I've been asked this question or asked a question about this movie on on the trivia pursuit cards, and the second time in the road that I'm gonna get it wrong. I got it wrong the last time, and I'm gonna get it wrong again now. Alice Wheelhouse will be one I'll be watching again real soon. By the way, I just got it on disc and everything, so I just have to get around to do it. But I too busy watching haunted attraction movies right now. So, but I'm prattling on a little bit because I'm just going to be making a guess here, and I don't know if you guys know this. I'm guessing if you've seen Alice Sweet Alice, you probably know this. I don't, so I'm going to try to make an educated guess here. So kind of lock in your answers too, and I'm going to prattle on about my answer. 1976, right? That's my big clue is 1976, and I'm guessing female. Just playing the odds. It's a horror movie and it's from the 70s. You know, it makes some sense. So I'm trying to think of who might be age appropriate in 1976. Who's making their film debut in 1976? It actually says actress. I just looked at the card again. It actually says actress. So yes, it's female. So yeah, Adrienne Barbeau. I don't think that's right. I'm almost positive her film debut was in something else. I'm almost positive that's wrong. But I'm going with Adrienne Barbeau. It's just a shot in the dark. Why not? Adrienne Barbeau is my answer. Final answer. Lock your answer in. Check the card. Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields. The film debut of Brooke Shields. And that surprises me. I'd have sworn Blue Lagoon was Brooke Shields' debut. Now I would have got to look this up because I don't feel like that's right. I mean, why would it lie to me, right? It's just a card. But I feel like that's not right. And I knew I wasn't going to be right. So whatever. It is what it is. I'm wrong. I've got homework to do on that movie, obviously. But is Brooke Shields, like, is it really? Like, did anybody else, by show of hands, did anybody else think Brooke Shields was film debut was Blue Lagoon? So I got it wrong, man. But I've been doing pretty good lately. So I guess I was due to have one be a clunker for me. So hopefully you guys got it right. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you enjoy a good haunted attraction. As you're watching this, it should be right in the middle of spooky season. So if you get an opportunity to go to a haunted attraction, go check it out. Come back, let me know what you think of them because they are a lot of fun. And hopefully you had fun with this video, and I thank you very much for hanging out to the very end. Until next time, class dismissed.
Okay. No! I cannot fucking